Brett Schaefer joins me now, who's the J. Kirkman Fellow for International Regulatory Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. Brett, good to have you back on the program.
Thanks so much for having me on.
I take it you'd share my assessment that China didn't deliberately launch this on the world, that this came about somehow. We don't know quite how yet, whether it was out of a wet market of live animals being sold for consumption, whether it came out of, say, research that was being done at the Wuhan Virus Institute, or whether it migrated naturally through some kind of animals or birds over to humans. But no matter how it happened, it did a lot of damage to China economically and in a human toll, which we may not even know about yet. We don't know how many people have died there, and we strongly suspect that the Chinese are lying. The White House got the word on that from the intelligence community that said yesterday China was not telling us the truth then and are not telling us the truth now, and that we might get a better measure of the deaths in that country by looking at the stacks of thousands and thousands of human remain urns sitting out in the yards outside of crematories in the city of Wuhan. But would China and could China use this to try to turn it to its advantage?
Well, they're certainly trying to. And you're right about the history here, regardless of how it originated. The facts are that China first detected this disease in late November, early December, and waited a month to inform the international community in the World Health Organization. They first notified them of the disease in December 31st. But they also told the World Health Organization that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission of the disease, which, of course, reassured the World Health Organization that there was no real threat to international pandemic and that this was largely going to be a disease isolated to China and they're going to handle it domestically. That, of course, was not true. And China's
now hold on, Brett. I want to put a punctuation point on that. China knew in late December that there was strong, if not rock solid evidence, there was human-to-human transmission. So what they told WHO to tell the rest of the world, they knew that wasn't true when they told the rest of the world, correct?
That's right. That's right. And the World Health Organization actually tweeted out on January 14th that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission. So this is over 2 weeks after China had notified the World Health Organization about the disease in the first place. Of course, there's also a report, and this is coming from the Taiwanese government, that they had evidence of human-to-human transmission at that point and informed the World Health Organization about that. But the World Health Organization ignored that evidence and that information from Taiwan, of course, because China regards Taiwan as a renegade province and not as an independent nation, and the World Health Organization observes China's preferences on that and disregarded that information. So that is also a piece of this puzzle as well. Why is the World Health Organization going out of its way to take Chinese information and statements at face value when China has a long history of suppressing information domestically on any number of issues, but also specifically has a history of suppressing information about contagious disease? If you go back to the SARS outbreak in 2003, China obfuscated and concealed information about that outbreak for months from the World Health Organization and other nations to preserve its own image and in its own interests. And so we have a history of China doing this in the past. Why the World Health Organization accepted Chinese statements on this issue at face value, considering its past, is a mystery, and it's frankly just shocking.
Well, and in fact, I'll admit I have a bias toward Taiwan. I was born there. I like the country a lot. They've done an amazing job of controlling the disease within their own borders, even though they have massive contact with the mainland. And they are their own country, in my view. They're also locked out of the WHO. They're not even physically allowed to set foot in the building. So when they have taken part in WHO meetings, they've had to do it by video, not because of geography or convenience, but because they're simply not allowed to set foot in the building. They're persona non grata. What's hard to understand, though, is there are a lot of contributors to the WHO. China is number 2 at 57 million, but the United States gives almost double that, 115 million bucks a year, and the WHO stiffs its biggest supporter on planet Earth in favor of its number 2 contributor. What explains that? Anything?
It is really hard to determine why. There's been some reporting that the Director General of the World Health Organization has a personal sense of loyalty to China because they supported him so strongly in his election back a few years ago. But that's just speculation. We don't know the reasoning why. But what is clear is that the World Health Organization has bent over backwards to echo Chinese statements on this particular issue, and the world has paid the price for it.
Now, what does this mean for China in terms of turning it to its advantage? Because it looks like from the outside that China's economy is cranking back up again. I mean, I'm sure at the grassroots level there may still be restrictions, but America is just diving into this, and we're looking at maybe coming out of this sometime in late May or June, or perhaps even as late as July. It's going to do a massive amount of damage, even if we come out of it very strong, you know, a V-shaped curve. Go in fast, come out fast. It's going to be a lot of damage that's done, and yet China is cranking back up, and they may have had many more fatalities than they're actually admitting to the rest of the world. So what else do you think we should expect from them? And do you agree with that assessment to the White House yesterday that they're not currently telling us the truth about the total number of cases or the number of fatalities?
Well, they haven't told us the truth so far, so I'm not sure why we would believe them going forward. I think that the old Reagan statement of truth, trust but verify, comes into play with this circumstance, and we should take everything that they say with a grain of salt, a huge grain of salt. In terms of how China's taking advantage of it, you're right. They had the disease first. They responded to it first, and they're on at least a month or two ahead of where the United States is in terms of the response. China has also been trying to engage in a huge PR battle to deflect its own responsibility from this. You see this by certain Chinese officials tweeting out conspiracy theories that the Wuhan or the coronavirus, COVID-19, was not originated in China, but was in fact put into China by the U.S. military. And these rumors were being spread about a couple weeks ago. They didn't get a very positive reception, and so, according to news reports anyway, they've sort of stopped saying these sorts of things. But they've instead turned to other efforts to try and burnish China's reputation. For instance, they're sending medical equipment to Europe. They're sending medical equipment to other countries. Unfortunately, a lot of that medical equipment that's being sent, particularly the testing, is faulty. And so some of this China is doing as a concerted effort to improve its image, but it's backfiring as well. What the United States needs to do and what other countries need to do is tell the truth about what happened here, and that is that China, through its own decisions to try and protect its reputation, failed to inform the international community, and as a result, this disease has spread far and wide and is impacting negatively the economies and the pocketbooks of individuals from the United States, from Latin America, from Europe, from other Asian countries, from African countries, and it's going to do so for quite some time, and we cannot forget China's role in this.
No, we certainly can't. Brett, thanks for the work you do at the Heritage Foundation, and we always appreciate your time when you're willing to come on the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
You bet. That's Brett Schaefer with us.